What is going on, guys? My name is the California Cougar and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be continuing the what if video for Survivor that I did a couple weeks ago. I am sorry that it's so late. I've been very busy lately and today's Sunday. This was originally supposed to come out yesterday, but I had to do it today instead because I was pretty busy yesterday. So we're going to be doing it today. But anyway, we're going to be continuing with that video. So what if the final jurors made it to Final Tribal Council? This time we're going to be covering seasons 21 through 40. We covered seasons 1 through 20 last time. So we're covering 21 through 40 this time. And as for the criteria, I explained that in the last video. So if you want to know what the criteria for like who the final juror is replacing at the Final Tribal Council, check out that last video. I go over it there. So anyway, let's get right into it. So starting off with Survivor Nicaragua. The final three was Chase, Sash, and Fabio. Holly was the final juror. She voted for Sash at the penultimate tribal council, so she would be replacing Sash in this scenario. And I don't really think anything matters here because I'm pretty sure Fabio wins no matter who he's up against. Except maybe Brenda, but then again, Brenda was out at Final 10, so yeah. But yeah, I'm pretty sure Chase still gets the votes that he originally got from Alina, Jane, and Brenda. And I think Fabio gets every other vote. I mean, I don't really... And I think even Sash might vote for Fabio in this case. I think Nayanka and Purple Kelly were the swing votes. I don't really see either of them switching their vote over to Holly, so... yeah, my prediction, Fabio wins 6-3 in this scenario. Alright, Survivor Redemption Island, and in this scenario we would have Ashley replacing Philip at the Final Tribal Council. So in this case, we would have Boston Rob, Natalie, and Ashley. And I know a lot of people would say, oh, Ashley wins this scenario hands down. And I could understand an argument where Ashley could win, but I just don't think that happens, especially with somebody like David Murphy on the jury, who was a huge advocate for Boston Rob. So, yeah, like, I think Boston Rob still wins. I do think Ashley gets some votes. Like, I think she gets Ralph. She might get Matt. Maybe Grant. It depends on how pissed off Grant was at Rob. Like, I don't really know. Maybe somebody like a Julie, but I don't really see anybody else. Like, I think David, Mike, and Steve would all vote for Rob in this case. I think Philip would also vote for Rob. So really, Rob just needs one more vote here, and I don't think that should be too hard for him to get. I mean, you have somebody like a Julie, a Steve, or why did I say Steve? Steve was already voting for Rob. But, yeah, like, I think Andrea, I think, is somebody that was kind of upset with the two girls for not going after Rob when they could have gotten him out. Like, they didn't even try to flush his idol out. So I feel like Andrea would be someone who's very critical of that, and therefore she would vote for Rob because he deserves it more. So, yeah, I still think Rob wins this season. Ashley probably gets a couple of votes. Like, I think Matt and Ralph are the two that she's most likely to get, and maybe Grant. I'll give her Grant's vote for the benefit of the doubt, but like even Julie, like I don't know if Julie would respect Ashley's game enough. So my final prediction: 6-3-0, Boston Rob wins. All right, so up next we have season 23, Survivor South Pacific, and in this scenario, Ozzy would be going to the Final Tribal Council, replacing Albert, because that's who we voted for. So we'd have Coach, Sophie, and Ozzy in the final three. And this one's pretty easy as well. Ozzy should win this in a landslide. Now, I don't think he sweeps. I know a lot of people would say, like, oh, he should easily sweep this jury vote. I don't think he does. I think Albert is someone that would vote for Sophie. I think Cochran might vote for Coach. But I do think Ozzy gets every other vote here. I mean, he obviously gets all the survive votes. So Jim, Keith, Dawn, Whitney, he has all those votes guaranteed. And then I think he also gets Brandon. I think he also gets Rick. And he might even get Edna. Edna's kind of a wild card. But I know she was rooting for Ozzy during that final Ponderosa episode. Like, she was really pulling for him. So I do think she would vote for Ozzy. So my final prediction, 7-1 Aussie wins. Up next, we have Survivor One World, where Christina, she would be going to the final tribal council, and I believe she voted for Sabrina at that penultimate tribal, so she would be replacing Sabrina at the final tribal. Let me double check that real quick. I'm pretty sure it was Sabrina, but it could have been Chelsea. I know she voted for Chelsea a couple times throughout the season. Let's see. Oh, come on. Okay, yeah, she did vote for Sabrina. So she voted for Sabrina, so she would be replacing Sabrina, and it doesn't, again, this one doesn't matter either. Kim wins this in a landslide. Christina might get Troyzan's vote because we know Troyzan was kind of upset with Kim, but even then I don't really know. Christina even tried to help Troyzan at one point. Of course, Troyzan ended up using that against Christina. Didn't work for Troyzan, but yeah. And who knows what Leaf does, but either way, this is still Kim's game. My prediction is, I would say 7-2. Leaf might throw Chelsea a bone, but I think he could vote for Christina as well. My prediction is 7-2. Kim wins over Christina and Chelsea. Chelsea gets the 0 votes. All right, so up next, Survivor Philippines. So in this scenario, we would have Malcolm replacing Denise at the final tribal council. So yeah, Denise, the original winner, she's not in the final tribal now. So yeah, Malcolm would be replaced. So we would have Malcolm, Scoopin, and Lisa, and Malcolm wins this. I'm almost certain Malcolm wins this. I think he gets all the votes that Denise got. And then Carter and RC probably throw their votes the same way they originally did. So yeah, 6-1 was the original vote. I think the same thing happens here, except Malcolm gets the 6 votes instead of Denise. Yeah, and Denise would obviously vote for Malcolm as well. So yeah, Malcolm wins this scenario 6-1. So up next we have Survivor Cara Moen, and this is kind of an interesting one because we do have Eddie, who was kind of a jury favorite at that point. We have Eddie replacing Dawn at the final tribal. So we would have Cochran, Eddie, and Sherry. Now, I'm pretty sure Cochran still wins this because even though the jury seemed to be fans of Eddie, they know Cochran played the better game. They just know that. Eddie didn't really do too much. He was terrible at challenges for the most part. Now, I do think Eddie could get a couple votes here, mainly from Reynold and maybe a Mike Snow, maybe even an Andrea, although I think that's less likely. But overall, I still think Cochran wins. Most likely in a 6-2-0 vote would be my prediction, with Eddie getting Reynold and Mike Snow's votes. Alright, so up next we have Survivor Blood versus Water, where Tina is at the final tribal council. She would be replacing Jervis, so we would have Tyson, Tina, and Monica, and this is a scenario that I think could be a real toss-up, because I'm not 100% sure where all the votes go here. But we can just go through all of them. Aris, I think, is kind of up in the air. We'll come back to him later. I think Vetus would be a Tina vote, for sure. I think Caleb would probably be a Tyson vote. And then we would have, let's see, who else was on the jury? So we had Hayden. I think Hayden would likely be a Tyson vote in this case, most likely. So that would make it 2-1 in favor of Tyson. I think Jervis would be a Tyson vote. So that's 3-1 in favor of Tyson. But of course, we still have Laura and Sierra. We also have Aris. And who is the other juror? I can never remember who. Katie. Katie's an obvious Tina vote. So that's 3-2, with Aris, Laura, and Sierra being the deciding votes. I'm not entirely sure where they go. I feel like Sierra would be someone who'd want to vote for Tyson because she played the better game, but of course, or because he played the better game. But of course, Laura is somebody that I feel like would be more inclined to vote for Tina because of how much time they spent together on Redemption Island. So, yeah, that would make it 4-3, and then we would have And then we would have Aris vote. Aris would be the swing vote, I think. And even if he votes for Tina, that would be the most interesting scenario. I think that's what would most likely happen, to be honest. I don't know if all three of them would vote for Tina, Aris, Laura, and Sierra. And then, of course, in that case, Tina would win. But for my prediction, I think it would be a 4-4 tie, and then Monica would have to break the tie. I'm guessing she would lean towards Tyson. So my prediction is Tyson still wins this, although barely. He barely hangs on. And in that case, it would be a 5-4 vote in favor of Tyson. So up next, we move on to Survivor Kagayan, which is the final two scenario of these videos. So we have Tony versus Wu. That was the original final two. Wu won immunity, so in this case he would be taking Cass to the end instead of Tony, and Wu should win this. He should absolutely win it, and it shouldn't really be all that close. I don't really think the jury respected Cass all that much. They didn't really respect Wu either, but I feel like they would respect Wu more for taking Tony out. So I think that would be the main factor here, is Tony, or the fact that Tony was taken out by Wu. I think that's what would get Wu the win here. I do think somebody like an LJ and a Jeffra might still vote for Cass, considering like she basically saved them in the game, and they never really voted for them, I don't think. But in the end, I'm pretty sure Wu gets every other vote. I mean, Sarah is somebody who absolutely hated Cass. I think she would vote for Wu. Same goes for Morgan. Same goes for Jeremiah. Same goes for Tasha. I mean, Tasha voted for Wu in the original game anyway, so it's not like she would be voting for Tony here, or voting for Cass here over Wu. So, yeah, and then you also have Trish. I think Trish is an obvious Wu vote. She hated Cass at the end, too. Tony would likely be a Wu vote. And then we have Spencer. Now, Spencer is kind of a wild card, but again, I think the fact that Wu would be seen as the person to take Tony out, I think that would get Spencer's respect. So, in that sense, I do think Spencer would vote for Wu. So, my final prediction is a 7-2 Wu win over Cass. Up next, we go to Survivor San Juan del Sur. And this is an interesting one, because although Keith wanted Missy out and he voted for Missy, the vote wasn't really between Keith and Missy. It was between Keith and Natalie. Jacqueline and Missy both contemplated voting for Natalie, although they knew that they wouldn't be able to beat Keith or Natalie, so they were essentially choosing the winner. But for this scenario, since Keith did vote for Missy, we're going to have Keith replacing Missy at the final tribal. So it's going to be a Keith, Jacqueline, Natalie final tribal. I'm pretty sure Natalie still wins this, although it's a lot closer. I think Keith gets the votes of Wes and Alec, most likely. Natalie, I think, gets the votes of Jeremy, Missy, and Baylor. And then Jacqueline obviously gets the vote of John. So that just leaves two people. We have Josh and Reed. And I'm pretty sure they would both vote for Natalie. Like, they're the swing votes here, but I do think they would vote for Natalie in this case. Reed, I think, wanted to vote for Natalie originally, but ended up voting for Jacqueline just to make sure that Missy did not tie for second place with Jacqueline. It was just to give Jacqueline second place. So, yeah, and I think Reed would be someone who's very critical of Keith's stick to the plan thing, because that screwed up Reed's game completely. So I feel like Reed would be very critical of that. So I think Keith would lose his vote just based on that alone. So my final prediction is a 5-2-1 vote in favor of Natalie over Keith and Jacqueline. So up next we have Survivor Worlds Apart. So in this scenario, we would have, this was a fire-making challenge, so Carolyn beat Rodney at the fire-making challenge. So in this case, we would have Rodney in the final three over Carolyn. So it would be Rodney, Mike, and Will. I think Mike still wins this, although I do think Rodney gets votes, mainly from Dan and Tyler, I think. But I'm pretty sure Mike gets every other vote here. I think the no-caller contingent plus Shireen would all lean heavily towards Mike. And yes, I know Jen raised her hand for Rodney at the reunion, but again, the reunion's so many months later. They had a chance to see the show, so we don't really believe them. So you can't really go off that, really. So, yeah. But yeah, Mike, that's 4 votes for Mike already. And I think Mike would also get Carolyn. And I think Mike would also get Sierra as well. So my final prediction is a 6-2-0 vote in favor of Mike over Rodney. So now we go to Survivor Cambodia. And in this scenario, we would have Kelly Wentworth at the final tribal. She would be replacing Spencer because that's who she voted for. So we would have Tasha, Kelly Wentworth, and Jeremy. And I'm pretty sure this is a coin flip because I think both Jeremy and Wentworth have locked votes here. Starting off with the jury, I think Cass, Sierra, Abby, I think the whole Witches Coven alliance would end up voting for Kelly Wentworth here. I think someone like Fishbach, I think Andrew Savage, and Spencer, I think would all vote for Jeremy. Kelly Wigglesworth, I think, is somebody that would also likely vote for Jeremy in this case. Like, I can never remember who the other jurors are. Let me double check. Survivor Cambodia. Alright, so the other jurors. Alright, so yeah, I already talked about Sierra. Joe's a question mark. I don't really know where he goes. Kimmy, I think, would be a Wentworth vote, so that makes it 4-4. So that ties it up. Keith, I think, would also be a Wentworth vote, or he would lean towards Wentworth, so that makes it 5-4. So it really comes down to Joe's vote. If he votes for Kelly, then obviously Kelly wins. If he votes for Jeremy, then it's a 5-5 tie. Tasha becomes the swing vote. She votes for Jeremy, and Jeremy wins. So it really comes down to Joe's vote. I think Joe would lean towards Jeremy. I don't really know why, but I feel like Jeremy having a pregnant wife back at home, like that whole argument, I think that would swing Joe towards him. So yeah, my instinct tells me that Jeremy wins on a 5-5 tie with Tasha casting the deciding vote for him. So overall, Jeremy wins 6-5-0 over Kelly Wentworth. Sad to say because I was actually rooting for Kelly Wentworth that season, but yeah. Alright, up next we have Survivor Ko-Rong, Season 32. So in this scenario, this was another fire-making challenge, so we would have Sydney in the final 3 replacing Aubrey. So we would have Michelle, Sydney, and Ty, and these votes could go anywhere. I think the vote could go anywhere. I think Michelle still has 3 locked votes in this case. I think Jason, Julia, and Scott would all be likely Michelle votes. I do think Sydney would have some votes as well, mainly from Aubrey and Nick. I think those 2 would likely be Sydney votes. There's also the whole voting off a jury member thing. I'm just gonna assume that Michelle still wins that and chooses to vote out Neil. Neil was someone that was never really that close to Michelle, so I do think she would still likely vote out Neil. So really, it comes down to Joe and Debbie because there are only 7 jurors after the jury vote out. So yeah, it really comes down to Joe and Debbie. Again, Michelle has the 3-2 advantage here, but yeah, again, it depends on where they go. I would assume Debbie would actually want to vote Sydney here, so that makes it 3-3, and then it comes down to Joe. Joe was obviously someone that was rooting for Aubrey. He wanted a brain to win, and I don't really know where he goes though, because I know he was very close with Michelle out there as well. But I do think he would lean towards Sydney. Like, my gut instinct tells me he would vote Sydney. So in this case, Sydney would win in a 4-3-0 vote. But it would be very close. Alright, so moving on to Survivor Millennials versus Gen X. In this case, we would have David at the final tribal replacing Adam, because that's who we voted for. So we would have David versus Ken versus Hannah, and this should be easy. David should sweep this jury vote. I mean, really? Is anybody going to vote for Ken or Hannah? Nobody voted for them against Adam, so why would they vote for them against David? David was a better player than Adam, so yeah, this should be an easy 10-0 vote here. I think it was 10, right? Yeah, it was 10 people, so yeah, David should easily sweep this. Moving on to Survivor Game Changers, we have the final juror here was Ty, so in this case he would be replacing, I believe, who did he vote for? He voted for Troyzan, I believe, right? So he would be replacing Troyzan. So we have Culpepper versus Ty versus Sarah. So this one's tough because I think votes could go all over the place here. So we kind of have to go through each jury member here. So we're going to go over each jury member individually here. So starting off with Haley, I have no idea where she goes. She went for Sarah, I believe, in the original jury vote. So would she vote for Ty over Sarah? I don't know. But we'll come back to her. Ozzy, I think, would vote for Ty in this case. I think he was someone that really respected Ty's game. I think Debbie would also consider voting for Ty, but I actually have her leaning towards Brad still. Same with Sierra. I think she would also vote Brad. Zeke, I'm inclined to believe he still votes for Sarah, so that would give Sarah a vote. So now we have a 2-1 vote here. Andrea, I'm inclined to believe she still votes Sarah. Same with Michaela. Sari could go anywhere. Like, this one's one of the tougher ones. I think Aubrey would vote for Ty. I think Troyzan would vote for Brad. So, going over the locked votes here, we have Ty and Aubrey, or not Ty and Aubrey. We have Troyzan and Aubrey. I think Troyzan and Aubrey, that makes it 1-1 in favor of Ty and Brad. Sierra and Debbie, I have voting for Brad. Ozzy, I have voting for Ty, so that makes it 3-2. And then Zeke, I have voting for Sarah. Michaela, I have voting for Sarah, so that's 3-2 with Sari, Andrea, and Haley's votes. So in this case, it's so tough. I don't know. I don't really know who any of those three wanted to vote for. I'm inclined to believe Sari would vote with Michaela, and therefore would likely vote Sarah, probably. So that would make it 3-2-3. And then that just leaves Andrea and Haley. I mean, neither of them voted for Brad, so I think Brad's out of the running here. So we just have to worry about Ty. I am inclined to believe that Sarah would win, though. I think Brad in this case would still have 3 votes. But I am inclined to believe that Ty would have 3 and Sarah would have 4. Why not? Let's go with it. My final prediction is a 4-3 vote in favor of Sarah winning. All right, up next we have Survivor HHH, Heroes, Healers, Hustlers. In this case, this was when the permanent fire-making challenge was introduced. So in this case, Devin would be replacing Ben in this scenario. So we would have a Devin, Chrissy, Ryan final 3. And this one's interesting. A lot of people might argue that Chrissy wins this. I think she gets more votes than she originally did, but I don't know if she ends up winning this game. I mean, we go through the votes here. I think Ryan could get more votes too, honestly. And I think Devin will get some votes as well. So starting off, Desi and Cole. I think Desi and Cole are big wild cards. I don't think Desi votes for Chrissy, though, because she didn't seem to like Chrissy very much. Cole, I think he's a total toss-up. JP probably votes for Chrissy in this scenario. I think Joe would probably vote for either Ryan or Devin. I heard reports that he wanted to vote for Ryan, but ended up voting for Ben. Lauren, I think Lauren in this case would be a Devin vote, most likely. I think Ashley would be a Devin vote. I think Mike would still be a Chrissy vote. And then I think Ben said he was going to vote for Ryan. So my guess is we have 1 vote for Ryan, we have 2 votes for Chrissy, and we have 2 votes for Devin so far. Which just leaves, we have Lauren and Ashley voting for Devin, we have Ben voting for Ryan, we have Mike and JP voting for Chrissy. So that leaves Joe, Cole, and Desi. So it's a 2-to-1 scenario. And I'm inclined to believe that they lean towards Devin. That would be my guess. One of them might vote for Ryan to tie it up, but my instinct tells me 4-2, Devin wins this game, would be my guess. I don't really see them voting for Chrissy. Cole didn't really seem to mind Chrissy too much, but Joe and Desi on their exit interviews didn't seem to like Chrissy, so yeah. Alright, up next we have Survivor Ghost Island. So in this scenario, we have Angela, who faced off against Wendell in the fire-making challenge, so she would be replacing Wendell in the final 3. And this one's easy. Dominic easily wins this. He wins this 10-0. That's my prediction. I don't really think there's any other outcome here in my eyes. So we move on to Survivor David versus Goliath. So in this scenario, we have Cara taking out Mike White in the fire-making challenge in this scenario. So, and in this case, I'm pretty sure Nick still wins this. Probably even more than he originally did. I mean, you look at the votes from Mike, which were Cara, Allison, and Christian. I do think Allison would still vote for Cara, but I think Christian would switch his vote to Nick. And I think Mike, in this case, would probably also vote for Nick. So that makes it 9-1. I do think Alec and maybe Dan could switch their votes to Cara. Alec definitely more likely because of his personal relationship with her. But yeah, Dan, I don't really know. I still think someone like John and maybe Carl, Gabby, I think they would still all vote for Nick. So my instinct tells me 8-2-0. Nick wins this over Cara and Angelina, with Cara getting Allison's vote and Alex's vote. That would be my guess. Alright, up next we have Survivor Edge of Extinction. So in this scenario, the fire-making challenge was between Chris and Rick Devens. So Rick Devens was the final juror, so he'd be replacing Chris in the final 3. And this should be easy. Rick Devens easily wins this. The question is, does he sweep? I don't know. Because, I mean, you look at the votes. I think Aubrey, Reem, they're obviously going to be voting for Rick Devens. I think Joe would vote Rick Devens. Eric, Rick Devens. Julia, David, they would be Rick Devens votes. Ron and Wardog, I think, would both vote for Rick Devens. Victoria likely votes for Rick Devens. I mean, Victoria didn't even vote for Gavin. I thought Gavin was going to get Victoria's vote, but that obviously didn't happen. So really the question is, the people who voted for Gavin, do they vote for Rick Devens here? I mean, Kelly Wentworth, I don't really know. It depends on how many people are anti-Edge in this season. And like Chris, I think Chris still votes for Rick Devens. Lauren, yeah, so it's really Lauren, Aurora, and Kelly. And I don't know if they're all willing to vote for Rick Devens, but my gut instinct tells me that Rick Devens does get all 3 votes, which would make it a 13-0 sweep for Rick Devens. That's my final prediction. If anything, I could see maybe Kelly and Lauren voting for Gavin, but I'm more inclined to believe that they would vote for Rick Devens in this case. So up next we have Survivor Island of the Idols. So in this scenario, we had a Dean versus Lauren fire-making challenge. And so Lauren will be replacing Dean in the final tribal. And the question is, like, it really becomes a final 2 between Tommy and Lauren in this case. Nora is going to be the 0 vote getter again in this scenario. I don't know who wins this. I really don't. I think we can work backwards. I think Dean is a Tommy vote. I think Janet is a Tommy vote. Elaine, Karishma, I don't really know where they go. I'm inclined to believe that Elaine votes for Lauren and Karishma votes for Tommy, but I'm not 100% on that. I do think Elizabeth and Aaron would both be Lauren votes here. I think they both wanted to vote for Lauren originally, so that makes it 3-3. Missy, I'm not entirely sure. I think she's the swing vote here, honestly. And then you have Jamal and Kelly as well. I think Jack is a Tommy vote, but like Jamal and Kelly, they might be Janet votes, which would make it 5-4, which leaves Missy as the swing vote. And I'm inclined to believe she votes for Tommy still, which would make it 5-5. And then Nora becomes the deciding vote, and who knows where she goes. But I'm more inclined to believe that she votes for Tommy. So my final prediction in this case would be Tommy wins on a 5-5 vote, with Nora casting the 6th and deciding vote for Tommy. So that's my prediction there. Tommy still pulls it off, but just barely. And then we finally have Survivor Winners at War. This is the last season that we're going to go over. And the final juror here was Sarah. She was up against Tony in the fire making challenge, so that's who she's going to be replacing. So we would have a Sarah versus Natalie versus Michelle final 3. And I think what happens here totally depends on the anti-edge group and where they go, because there were some people that wanted to vote for Michelle. Like, I think Adam, Wendell, Danny, I know Danny was pretty close with Wendell out there, and Nick. I think that group of 4 wanted to vote for Michelle, but they ended up voting for Tony just to make sure Natalie didn't win. I have a feeling that the same thing would happen here. I do think Natalie might get more votes than she originally did. She got Jeremy, Tyson, Parvati, and Ethan. I think she still gets those votes easily. I don't really see why she wouldn't. Plus, I think Natalie could potentially get Rob and Amber's votes as well. At least Amber. Rob is kind of a question mark, but yeah, like, I know Rob respected Natalie's game overall, so I'm inclined to believe that he would vote for Natalie over Sarah. He didn't really seem to like Sarah all that much. So, yeah, my instinct tells me it would be a 10-6 vote. Now, let's say that the 4 people I talked about do vote for Michelle, and Michelle cast the deciding vote. I think she would vote for Natalie over Sarah. So, yeah, that would give Natalie a win. So that's why I'm predicting that those 4 stick with voting for Sarah to make sure Natalie doesn't win. Sarah wins this game 10-6-0. And yeah, the people that voted for Tony that I didn't talk about, so like Tony would obviously be a Sarah vote. I think Ben would obviously be a Sarah vote. Denise would be a Sarah vote. And then Kim and Sophie, I think, we're both going to be Sarah votes as well. And then Yul. Like, Yul didn't really seem to like Sarah as much, but I'm still inclined to believe that he votes for Sarah. So, my prediction, Sarah wins 10-6-0. And there it is. There is all 40 seasons of What If the final juror made it to the final tribal council. That's my predictions on all of it. So what are your predictions for seasons 21 through 40? What do you think would happen if the final juror made it to the final tribal council using the same criteria I mentioned? Let me know down in the comments below what you think. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video, or if you didn't enjoy this video, don't be afraid to hit that dislike button. Dislikes don't bother me, even though YouTube seems to think they do. Bunch of bitch-made garbage. But yeah, anyway, hit that thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe to my channel for more videos to come in the future. And until that next video, once again, my name is the California Cougar. And always remember, stay California cool. Peace!